80% of the people who get infected get the virus from someone who has no symptoms. That means that you can be standing and having a conversation with someone and getting infected with the virus without either of you being aware that that's happening. And that's because we now know that just speaking, talking in a normal voice, it appears to be able to transmit the virus to the person you're interacting with. That's another reason why the 6 feet apart and the face coverings are so important, because we don't know really who is capable of transmitting the virus. So to be safe and to keep everyone protected, that's the whole point of the social distancing and the face coverings, to protect each other and everyone else in our communities.
Happy 4th of July, Carla and everybody. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. And that was just the beginning of April when we started talking about social distancing, talking about the mask. The pandemic had hit really hard, starting then and spreading. And Carolyn, you know, it's July 4th. When I was growing up, and even up until last year, people would say, have a safe Independence Day, and they were talking about driving and traveling, or even fireworks. But today we're talking about something else, and that's COVID-19, that you can be responsible, just like Dr. Hildreth said when he was talking about that spread just yesterday. He was here in Nashville, you know, he's in Meharry, and he also does the briefings with the mayor here. He said that for Memorial Day, that one person could spread this to 500 people. So yesterday, the toll in Nashville for the daily toll was 600. That's the highest level of infections per day. Remember, I got up to go and I went to look at something on television real quick. I heard something on CNN and I wanted to make sure it was correct. And they had it on the screen, 11,400 in Florida in one day, the highest. And that's what they were talking about.
We're still watching 4 states just as we were last week. You're talking Florida, you're talking Texas, Arizona, California, where the numbers are surging. I just saw a chart this morning. It's probably the first time we weren't at the top of the chart, but it was 4 months ago. 4 months ago that we pulled together quickly a team of leading experts, doctors, to talk about what was happening in our country. And it was triggered all at that time by Dr. Georges Benjamin, who had been on Capitol Hill testifying. He had gone on to Capitol Hill actually the month before. And so he was testifying in Washington, D.C. I was reading this story. I called him up very quickly, also called up Dr. Donna Christensen and Dr. Reed Tuckson and said, you guys, we got to talk about this. We got to figure out a way to calm some fears with some facts. All 4 of these individuals strongly committed, Dr. Hildreth in that group as well, but committed to eliminating health disparities. And so we called Dr. Benjamin back up again this week and said, come on back onto the show, because we need to talk about what you told us back in April during the taping of that show, what you were testifying to. It has all come to play out. And where are we now? How would you describe our situation now, Dr. Benjamin? Welcome.
Hi, how are you, Carol and Carla? You know, the challenge we have is that we've now got a really big resurgence. But let's take ourselves back. Let's remind ourselves that the original plan was for us to shelter in our homes, to try to get our hands around this so that our health system will be better prepared to handle the sick people that came in. And in many parts of the country, we were very successful in doing that. New York's the best example of that today. The challenge, though, we had is that everybody didn't do it. We had some people that are very resistant to simply masking and washing their hands and physical distancing. And now, of course, we're seeing the result of some of that, and as well as some of the mass gatherings that we've had, particularly among young people. You know, remember that now today, there's over 2.8 million cases in the United States. In April, you know, we were in a much smaller number, right? We're in the thousands. We have over 129,000 people who have died. And yesterday, in terms of new cases, we were over 50,000 new cases in a single day. That's nationwide. And these big resurgences we're seeing across the whole country. You know, I have this map that I look at every day called How We Reopen Safely. It's a stoplight chart, red, green, yellow. And there was a time when a lot of it was yellow, fair amount red, some bright spots of green. Well, today we've still got 3 states that are green. New York, again, is another example of that. But only 8 states are yellow, and the rest of the nation is red. And not only red, but the number of cases growing in all those states each and every day. Now, the good news, bad news story is that a lot of them are young people who, while young people can get this for sure, and we're now seeing more and more young people get really sick, which is very concerning, but still better than older folks. But I want to make sure everyone hears me that yes, you can get sick even if you're young and even if you're a child. We know that for sure now. And then finally, we've learned a lot on the treatment side of this. So for example, one of the reasons we probably don't have as many deaths that's in proportion to the number of new cases that we have. Number one, the people that are getting the new disease are younger overall. Number two, docs have learned a whole lot better about how to treat this disease, what to do, what not to do, when to intubate people, when not to intubate people, whether that's in the tube in their lungs so they can help breathe them. And we've got a couple medications that help us with this severe inflammation that people get. Dexamethasone and remdesivir are 2 medications that we're still learning how best to use them, but they're a ray of hope in treating this disease. Finally, we don't have a vaccine yet, although we have had some promising results from vaccines. I think I mentioned this the last time I was on the show, that the best we've ever done to take a vaccine is 4 years from conception to actually getting the vaccine. The good news in some ways here is that with the first SARS virus that we had several years ago, which any new vaccine that we're doing now is based on, we had a running start. So we've cut off a few years in terms of our prior experience, but I still don't think we're going to have a vaccine before the first of the year. I know people say it'll be at the end of the year, but it'll probably be in the first of the year or so.
And Dr. Benjamin, you're saying exactly what Dr. Hildreth said when I went to interview him for those public service announcements. And that's one of the things that we talked about the vaccine. He's been in infectious disease, in addition to being president of Meharry and CEO of infectious disease for 40 something years. And, we hear all these people saying, oh, we're coming up with the vaccine. It'll be here at the end of the year, beginning of the year. And he said he does not see that because you have to do testing. And who's going to test something like the next week or something, the way these people are explaining. But they and many other hospitals and universities and medical centers are working on things that may be able to retard some of the cells, as you know. You mentioned children several times when you were just giving us the forecast again. And one of the things that we know a lot of schools have now delayed again, school, because we know that children can now get it. What can you tell parents to prepare their children right now? And are there any things that they need to, we take vitamin C and D, are there things that they could be taking? And what should we tell parents as they prepare to go to school?
Well, obviously kids need to, have a healthy meal, get a good rest, just like you would for any going to school. But I do think that parents need to build into their morning ritual a series of steps to see if their kids are okay to go to school. So what I mean by that is any fever. I would take my child's temperature every day before I go to school. Normally parents don't do that. You put their hand on their forehead and if they look okay, you send them to school, right?
Right.
But if the child is grumpy, we all know our kids, and not feeling well, that kid should not go to school at all. If they have a temperature, fever, they should not go to school at all. If they have any kind of respiratory symptoms, cough, stuffy nose, any of that kind of stuff, no daycare, no school. That's the first thing that all parents should do. And then those children will need to be checked when they get to school. And any child that has anything that looks like they might be sick, they'll need to have a safe place for that child so the parents can come and get them. And lots of sanitation. Now, you and I know that getting a 2-year-old, a second grader, a fourth grader to wash their hands is a monumental event. But we need to practice their hand washing. And for children over 2 years old, I don't know what the schools will ultimately do, But right now, we're recommending mask wearing for kids over 2 years of age, and getting them comfortable to do that right now. We don't know what's going to happen. And also, I would encourage parents to, if they can afford it, to certainly, hook their kids up with computers and Wi-Fi, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want those kids to fall behind in their education. And while we had to rush to send kids home from school this spring, we do have the summer to prepare for that. And I think finally, the schools, a lot of our kids, particularly communities of color, go to schools with poor ventilation, inadequate ventilation, structural problems. The schools need to find the money to fix those over the summer so that all the kids can go to healthy school environments.
Well, you've once again given us some great advice, and I forgot to leave. I think I left out your long title, but I should let people know that you represent the American Public Health Association in Washington, D.C. with great distinction, and we thank you for that. And we want you to stay close and stay in touch with us, because
Yes.
you always come and giving us some great advice, and we just hope people listen and take heed. Take care of yourself and stay safe, Dr. Benjamin.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Carla.
Thank you.
Happy 4th of July, by the way.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you started that conversation about schools. We're going to be talking about schools. We've got a school board member and South Carolina's Teacher of the Year coming up next, right after this message.
This is Dawn Staley, head coach of the University of South Carolina women's basketball team. In the fight against COVID-19, we all have an important role to play. Let's stop COVID-19 and spread caring. And remember to stay careful and stay connected. Visit DHEC's website for more ways to stay South Carolina strong.
We want people staying South Carolina strong, Tennessee strong. I mean, we've been focusing on the Bible Belt, obviously, in the Southeast, because Dr. Benjamin told us people with health disparities were going to be at greater risk. But
Right.
today we're talking education, getting ready to go back to school.
Absolutely. And we have some guests with us to talk about that. And there's the Teacher of the Year, Miss Chandra Jefferson, the Teacher of the Year, South Carolina Teacher of the Year. And we also have Mr. James Shad, and he is a practicing attorney, and he is joining us as well. Thank both of you all for joining us today on the Health Wrap.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for having us.
Lost my voice there for a second. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shad, Attorney Shad here in Columbia, South Carolina, serving on the Richland 2 School Board. And I'm just meeting Chandra for the first time, but congratulations on Teacher of the Year. So we're talking about getting ready for school. I know, Chandra, you served on the governor's committee called Accelerate SC, as well as a regional committee. That was to come up with a plan for people to use to think about going back?
Yes, so I actually served the state superintendent of education, Molly Spearman, formed an Accelerate Ed committee to help figure out recommendations. It was a team of 12 to help figure out recommendations for going back to school. And our team was divided into 3 different groups. We focused on building and student services, instruction, and operations. So back in March 15th, when schools closed, we know that I have to always congratulate my teachers. They sprang into action and did everything that we could to make sure that learning continued in South Carolina, but now that schools we're out for the summer, it's like, okay, what are we going to do when we get back? So we made several recommendations as a committee, and we completed those last week. And the website where you can go to the full list of recommendations is dedicationtoeducation.com, and that's where our recommendations are. But we created a 4-phase plan, and the first phase is immediate action. And with that, we talk about the purchasing of PPE for school districts, possibly offering some infrastructure grants, because we know, as the doctor mentioned, that there are some schools that just aren't prepared with the ventilation, with hand sanitizing stations, with dividers in the nurse's office, and even fully equipped with nurses. So we recommended that we have a nurse in every single school, and that schools are able to kind of assess what safety and infrastructure updates they might need, and they can apply for those updates and use some of their CARES Act funding for those updates. The second phase that we went into was summer planning and preparation. So right now, you all might notice that across the state, districts are sending out surveys to parents, to teachers, to students, just to get a gauge of how everyone is feeling. And if they think their child will return to school, trying to figure out which teachers are immunocompromised, because some of the teachers that have underlying health issues might not be able to return, and adjusting policies within our school districts to be able to accommodate those students and those staff member needs. The third phase is pre-opening, and then we also have that reopening phase. I was fortunate enough to be on the student services and building subcommittee, where we focused on like what services, in addition to paying attention to the health and safety needs of our students, that were needed. And some of those are mental health issues, because mental health and trauma issues, because we know that with students and teachers being at home, that there are some trauma that students have faced. So making sure that we partner with our Department of Mental Health, we partner with DHEC to make sure that we have those guidelines in place, and just something in place to help with the social emotional needs of our students and our staff when they return. But the key thing here is knowing that these are recommendations, and we know that every district is not the same. We have small districts that might have totally different needs than those larger districts. So these are just recommendations, but basically it's up to the districts to identify their needs and make a plan that help and support their community and their students.
So Attorney Shad, that's where the file comes over to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The book comes over to you. And what are y'all gonna do? I mean, Richland too, for those who aren't familiar with the district, one of the finest districts in South Carolina,
Yes.
and has done great things and very innovative. So what's next?
So
What's
we still have our challenges, and I appreciate you giving us the kudos on where we are as a district. But like Ms. Jefferson said, the needs can be different from our smaller rural districts as opposed to ours. We are somewhat in Northeast Richland County. We're somewhat of a suburban area, but we still have challenges that are ahead of us. Even though we have, for the most part, a robust broadband coverage, there's still pockets of areas where broadband is a challenge. And that's really been the case for the state. And obviously, we're still trying to advocate to our legislators and the governor to make sure that broadband really is treated as a utility, because it's absolutely a necessary thing. I know Dr. Benjamin had talked earlier about having Wi-Fi and laptops and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we still have those challenges even in Richland District 2, making sure that we have those hotspots. And we did that in the spring. Although there was a shutdown, there was still, our students were allowed and their parents were allowed to come on to our school campuses, and those school buildings served as hotspot Wi-Fi zones for them to continue to be educated. We're not quite sure what this is going to be like when we return back in the fall, if we return in the fall. But what we've done is we have some task force. We have our reopening task force, and they've been going through this throughout the entire summer. As Ms. Jefferson said, the survey went out in June, and we just sent one out this past Wednesday, just to hear from our staff, from our parents, and from the students, just to find out exactly where they are, what are they comfortable with. And so it's still an evolving situation, but we really have, and like she said, each individual district has to kind of, with the guidance from CDC and DHEC and that sort of thing, try to formulate a plan. But the target keeps moving, as Dr. Benjamin said. We've had spikes; it's gone down. Now we're seeing more young people are becoming infected and now becoming sick. Just 6 weeks ago, kids can get it; they can become carriers, and we were concerned about the elderly population that they may come in contact with, but they really wasn't getting sick. Now we're finding that that's the case. So we have to take all that in consideration when we determine, are we going back to a traditional form of school? And if so, what does that look like? What does that mean for that fourth grader or third grader they're always in each other's faces and mouths and that sort of thing? And a mask can obviously be very uncomfortable. And then frankly, as adults, our staff and our teachers, Some of them may have very personal conviction in terms of whether they should wear their PPEs, whether they're doing it now on their own, and then whether we're going to require them to do so and to enforce that with all of our students. And I did want to touch on what Dr. Benjamin was saying, because this is what we had a conversation about at our last board meeting this past Tuesday, was the temperature checks. What does that look? Because we discussed that. Are we going to check every single student when they come in every single day? And if they come presenting with, a fever, what do we do? Now, as Dr. Benjamin was speaking, I was wondering if that parent who has to go to work that day, but that child presents with a fever, is it COVID? We don't know. Or is it like, especially in the fall and in the winter, kids get cold. They may have just a regular type of virus, and they may have. Now, of course, we always suggest that they keep them home until the fever breaks for 24 hours. But that parent has to make that decision whether they send their child to school. Not sure if it's COVID related, but they have to actually go to work and they don't have childcare at home. What are they going to do? Are they going to potentially infect other kids? And then what still keeps me up at night is we take in all these precautions and kids still become carriers, and then they go back home to their parents, to their grandparents, people who are immunocompromised. And are they actually going to be, involuntarily affecting those persons because they were in our school environment? We still have to do teaching and learning, but we're not quite sure exactly where we are. And we also have a hybrid, a blended, where we may have virtual school, so kids can still learn, teachers can educate them, but then there's the social aspect of it. As you all know, when we were in school, we became better citizens because we socialized with folks. Do we rob our kids of that by making sure that they get educated, and yes, they're in their safe position in the comfort of their home, but there's the socialization part is missing.
Absolutely. Chandra, I wanted to ask you, what is in place, because some parents are getting anxious, they're panicking because we know it's going to be probably a combination of remote distance learning and in school some days, if it's not totally closed down. Some parents are concerned because they still have to work, and they have to work at home, a lot of them, when this happens, when we go back to another phase. The workload for the parents that the school district gives the kids, will there be adjustments for that? Because in the summer, that's a short period of time. But as we go into a fall semester, are there accommodations or the workload a little different than it would traditionally be?
Yes. Well, when we jumped into this, y'all know as teachers, we jumped into it blind. So oftentimes in the very beginning, teachers were given too much work to the students when they were going home, and parents were like, it's taking us 5 hours with my kindergartner to complete all of these. So the State Department of Education actually created a chart, and it's on that same website that tells parents exactly how long a student from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade should be spending in front of the computer and should be actually learning. And jumping kind of back to what Shad was saying, we also recommend for school districts to, in case there is a resurgence of this virus, to already have a virtual learning plan, a full virtual learning plan in place. So I know a lot of the school districts are opting to utilize their CARES Act funding for purchasing Wi-Fi access, like MiFis and different devices like that, so students can have access to internet at home. But there is guidelines from the State Department for the minutes that students should learn each day.
I want to show you all something. It's not scientific. It's a Facebook poll survey we took. We raised the question, how comfortable were people in sending their students or children back to school? And we really kind of got a mixed bag of responses from that Facebook poll. Everybody wasn't overwhelming. And what we know here in South Carolina is, you walk down the street and people will stop you and start talking to you and tell you what you need to be doing on the school board or need to be doing in the classroom. So what are you both prepared to say or do for those people who come up to you and say, do you really think it's time, or is this too soon?
Well,
I would say right now that it's important for us to pay attention to like the CDC guidelines and the guidelines for DHEC, and that we as parents, as community members, as teachers, that we're doing our part as well to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So when we're out, making sure that we're wearing our masks, that we're socially distancing to help things get closer to normal as possible. So just paying close attention, but also as a parent, if you feel that, I don't feel it's safe to send my kid back to school, look at the other options, such as the online charter schools, virtual SC. It's nothing wrong with that. If you don't feel comfortable, go ahead and start weighing the other option, because there are options that students can actually attend this next year virtually. So go ahead and start looking into those.
Attorney Shad, I know you're a girl dad too. How comfortable are you?
Well, it's interesting. I'm not comfortable. I have to be honest. But I do trust that our district is going to do everything in their power to make sure that all the students are safe. And I appreciate them providing those options to the teachers. We just started our virtual school. We just launched that. So that is absolutely an option for parents. And what we're telling them is that it's really for the entire year. As soon as they decide to enroll their child there, they are locked in there for the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say, I have 4 girls, and we talk to them probably every 2 or 3 days just to check on them to see how they feel about what they feel about it. And we, even in our own household, we get different views. One daughter says, "I'm ready to get back, and I'm fine as long as we, I have my mask on, and I hope my friends and classmates have it on. I should be fine." I have one other that's, "I just don't want to go back to school, Daddy, because it's just not safe." So even in our own household, we have disparate views. And as parents, Tammy and I are like, well, and Tammy works in the school system at Fort Jackson, our military installation in Columbia. And, they're making the preparations as well. And she has a job to do, and they're going to do what they can to take care of their staff and their students as well. But, to hear these numbers every single day and these record numbers that are going up, we don't have a handle on it as a country. However, we can still address and adjust to where we are and where we're going. So, sometimes though, you have to do the uncomfortable thing. And we know that we're not going to please every single parent, every single teacher. We're not going to please every single student, but we have to do what with the current information that we have and try to plan. And then, of course, like Shonda said, to make sure that we have the contingency plan if things, kind of go for the worst, because at the end of the day, we want our kids safe, our staff safe, and we want teaching and learning to occur.
Shad, you got enough people over there to do the Shad survey. Close to a basketball team.
That's right.
The Shad survey. Listen, thank you both for taking time for this 4th of July. Chandra, it was a pleasure to meet you. Congratulations on your honor and the work that you've done on behalf of our community. Both of you all. Stay safe, and we hope to see you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Great, two great people. Good to have them on this episode. Well, we've got a quick message, and then we'll be right back after this message.
We are a team. Black, white, brown.
Together, we are a family. We are brothers.
We represent ourselves, our families, our hometowns,
our university,
and our country.
We stand on the shoulders of giants.
Our grandparents and parents.
Our ancestors, our heroes, Alabama alumni,
and former players who have changed the world.
Beginning on our historic campus, we speak as one,
acknowledging our history,
honoring their legacy, and building a better, more just future.
On the field, we are relentless.
We are strong. We are conquerors.
But we are human beings first.
And in this moment in history, we can't be silent. We must speak up for our brothers and sisters, for our sons and daughters.
We speak for justice, for fairness,
for equality, for greater understanding.
We stand together against racism,
against brutality,
against violence,
for a better world.
When we see our families, our neighbors, our classmates subjected to violence, we recognize the fear in their eyes.
And when we experience racism, it hurts.
In the game, we are one team.
One heartbeat, one mission.
Yet we are diverse.
We don't always agree,
but we learn so much from each other.
And we are so much better together.
Until I listen with an open heart and mind, I can't understand his experience and his pain.
The virus has shown us how much we benefit from being together.
And how much we need each other.
We believe the solutions to our challenges are within us.
We choose to listen.
We choose to hear.
And understand others' perspectives.
Let's listen.
Let's unite.
Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
Until Black lives matter.
Until Black lives matter.
Until Black lives matter.
Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
So, Carolyn, I want to give a huge shout out to Alex Leatherwood, the first player that you saw there from the University of Alabama. I mean, he scores big with this one. To be able to write this, he composed this, and then had his fellow players and Coach Saban to join in to do that video. And it's simply a wonderful message. But, you know, there is always some controversy when you do good. So the mayor in Carbon Hill, one of the mayors near Birmingham, he had to resign because he had some unkind things to say about that. But most people, 99%, of course, they're on board because this is what we need as far as a healing in the country. And I commend this lineman, number 70. So when you go to the University of Alabama game, you need to cheer for Alex for composing that beautiful essay.
But as my governor said, until we get our act together and wear the mask, we're not going to any football games. So we need to get our act together this 4th of July. It was a beautiful piece. We're glad we got to share it. We had a lot going on this show this Saturday, and hope it's been useful to our viewers and that they've gotten some information that they can use. I know you've got more going on this weekend. This is a working weekend for you. What's going on?
Well, that was kind of a preview to what I'm doing with Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. We have the Ebenezer in Action. It's a social justice program that's going to take place on Facebook, Ebenezer Baptist Church Facebook, and it's going to involve the entire community, multi-faith, multicultural, and multi-generational. Everyone from Curtis Blow to an 8-year-old and LL Cool J, different priests, different rabbis, different ministers. And we're going to look at some issues that have been going on socially and talk about some of the solutions. We also, those courageous students from Spelman and Morehouse that we saw all across the country who were brutalized by the police. Been talking to them. They will be participating as well. So it's at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, Eastern time. And it is We Will Not Be Silent.
Sounds like a great show, another great project. Thanks for sharing it with us. And thanks to everybody for watching on this 4th of July. I myself is just going to sit right here at home. That's what the public health authorities said. And try to stay cool, not to melt. It is hot as
Are you going to eat a hot dog?
Jeez, huh?
Are you going to eat a hot dog?
I would if I had some Winfrey relish, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother show.
Winfrey Foods raw relish.
I'm not going to go there. But I will be eating something. You know, this is the land of barbecue in Charleston.
South Carolina barbecue with that vinegar.
Well, we got some tomato too, so we'll be taste testing. We'll be taste testing.
I love the vinegar.
The most important thing is for everyone to stay safe until we see you the next time. And we thank you so much for being with us on this 4th of July.
Bye-bye. Bye.